The weeks that followed the council meeting were the busiest in human history. Every space resource on Earth was mobilized. Every military asset was activated. Every nation on Earth united under one single command structure for the first time. There was no debate about this unity. The time for division had ended. Captain Linda Myers took command of all human military operations from a secure facility hidden deep in the mountains of Switzerland. Around her were the best tactical officers Earth had produced. They worked at computers and display screens that showed the status of every human ship, every weapon, every piece of military equipment across the solar system. Linda knew that the Vorten intelligence network would be watching Earth. They would detect unusual activity. So she made sure that everything appeared normal. Human exploration vessels that had been on deep space missions were called back to the solar system, but the orders were given slowly. New ships were not launched. No emergency protocols were activated on public communication channels. To any outside observer, humanity was simply conducting normal operations. The Vorten received intelligence reports about this activity. Their spies on Meridian 7 sent messages back to the Vorten government. But Zextra had already reported to her superiors that humans were weak and primitive. She had told them that Earth was no military threat. So, when the intelligence officers reported that human ships were moving, Zextra dismissed the reports as routine activity. She assured her government that humans could not possibly pose any danger. Jake attended 2 more council sessions in the weeks that followed. Each time, other alien delegates mocked humanity. Each time, they referenced Zextra's assessment of human weakness. Each time, Jake listened without anger. Each time, he responded, only with polite words and quiet dignity before walking away. But something was changing beneath the surface that no one in the council could see. Deep in space, far from the attention of the galactic community, human military engineers were working on something extraordinary. They had taken Earth's best weapons and redesigned them based on principles of combat that humans understood in their bones. Humans came from a world where danger was constant, where predators had hunted human ancestors for millions of years, where survival meant thinking faster than your enemy, where adaptation meant the difference between life and death. The human military doctrine that emerged from this was different from every other species in the galaxy. Other civilizations had grown strong through overwhelming firepower or through superior defensive shields. But humans could not match the Vorten in raw power. So instead, they focused on something else entirely: speed, unpredictability, coordination, between units that worked together as if they shared one mind. Small ships that moved like hunting predators, striking fast and then disappearing. Weapons that were not the strongest in the galaxy, but were used with perfect timing and perfect accuracy. Battle tactics that seemed illogical until you saw them executed, and then they seemed inevitable. The human fleet was not large. Humans could never build as many ships as the Vorten, but every ship was prepared with perfect precision. Every crew member was trained to the highest level. Every captain understood that human strength did not come from matching the enemy in power. It came from understanding how the enemy thought and then acting in ways they could not predict. 3 battle groups were assembled in secret on the far side of Earth's moon. The first battle group was commanded by Commander Sarah Cole, a woman with 15 years of military experience. The second group was led by Captain Jack Morrison, who had studied every recorded combat scenario in human history. The third group was under Captain Rachel Torres, who had fought pirates in Earth's outer territories and learned how to survive against overwhelming odds. These 3 commanders met with Linda Myers through secure communication channels. Linda told them exactly what was coming and what their role would be. She told them that they would not be fighting for glory or for conquest. They would be fighting for Earth's right to exist as an equal in the galaxy. They would be fighting because humanity had been insulted and dismissed. And they would be fighting because sometimes the only language that certain species understood was the language of combat. Linda gave them complete tactical freedom. She told them that they would know when to act because the Vorthen would make the first move. She told them to be ready, but to remain patient. She told them to prepare for a battle that would change everything. Meanwhile, Jake continued his normal duties as Earth representative. He lived in the embassy. He attended meetings. He reviewed reports. But he was also waiting. He was watching the intelligence reports about Vorthen military movements. He was reading the communications that Zexthra was sending back to her government. He was learning that the ambassador had staked her reputation on humanity being weak. This was important. When a powerful being stakes their reputation on something, they become unable to accept evidence that contradicts them. Zexthra had told her government that humans were not a threat. For her to admit she was wrong now would mean losing her position. So she would push harder. She would demand that the Vorthen take action to prove human weakness. She would recommend that the Vorthen demonstrate their superiority in a clear way. And when she did that, humanity would be ready. Jake stood in the lace observation window of the embassy one night, looking out at the station beyond. He could see the traffic of alien ships moving through space. He could see the Vorthen destroyer that had been positioned near Meridian 7. The Vorthen claimed it was there for peaceful purposes, but Jake knew better. It was there as a threat. It was there to intimidate. A message came through on his secure communicator. It was from Linda. Only 3 words. All units ready. Standing by. Jake looked out at the Vorthen destroyer and said nothing. He did not need to speak. Everything that needed to be said had already been communicated. Humanity was prepared. Humanity would not run. Humanity would not beg. And when the time came, humanity would show the galaxy exactly what a people born on a harsh world could truly accomplish. The waiting continued. Days passed. A week passed. 2 weeks. Jake maintained his calm appearance while inside the embassy and in the council chambers. But all across the solar system, human military crews were at their stations. Weapons were loaded. Ships were fueled. Every soldier, every pilot, every officer was ready for what was coming next. The silence hung over everything like a held breath. And in that silence, the entire balance of galactic power was about to shift. Commander Jake Harrison stood in the center of the Great Assembly Hall on Meridian 7, a space station built by the Galactic Council 300 years ago. The hall was massive. Its walls stretched up 5 stories high. The floor was polished to a mirror shine. Hundreds of delegates from different alien species filled the seats around him. They were here to watch him speak about Earth and humanity's place in the galaxy. Jake wore his military uniform, the blue and gray colors of Earth's Space Defense Force. He was tall for a human, standing just under 2 meters. His dark hair was cut short. His face showed no expression. He had prepared for this moment for months. The negotiations would determine if humanity got fair trade access to galactic markets. If Earth failed here, the species would stay isolated and poor. The council chamber fell silent as the massive Vorthen ambassador stepped forward. Her name was Zexthra. She was 3 meters tall, with gray skin and 4 arms. Her species was known as fierce warriors. The Vorthen had conquered 12 systems and defeated 3 advanced civilizations in military conflicts. They were proud of their power. Zexthra moved to stand directly in front of Jake. The other delegates watched carefully. They knew something important was about to happen. The Vorthen ambassador opened her mouth and began to speak in a voice that filled the entire chamber. "So this is the human representative," Zexthra said. Her tone was not respectful. It was heavy with mockery. "I must admit, I expected someone larger. I expected someone who looked less fragile. Your species is interesting. You are soft creatures who break easily. You live for only 80 years. You require constant sleep and food. You cannot survive in hard vacuum without protection. Jake said nothing. He stood straight and looked at her directly. Zextra continued, speaking louder now so all delegates could hear. I have read about your species. Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are slow. You have no defensive shields that we cannot break through in minutes. Your military strategy relies on luck and chance, not on true tactical thinking. The Vorthen have faced real threats. We have fought species with technology you cannot even imagine. And we have crushed them all. Several delegates began to laugh. The sound echoed through the chamber. Jake's hands stayed at his sides. His jaw tightened slightly, but he showed no anger in his face. I will be honest with your council, Zextra said, gesturing to the delegates around them. Humanity is not ready to join the galactic community as equals. Earth should be placed under Vorthen protection. Your species should accept a subordinate trade position. You should pay tribute to us for security. This is fair. This is the natural order. She turned to face the other delegates directly now, ignoring Jake completely. The humans are weak. They will never be a true military power. They cannot think like warriors. They cannot act with the aggression that victory requires. I have studied their history. They spend most of their energy fighting each other instead of preparing for real threats. This is the behavior of a primitive species. More laughter filled the hall. Several delegates nodded in agreement with Zextra. The Telker ambassador, an insect-like creature with 6 legs, leaned over to whisper something to his neighbor. The Craxian representative, who had been neutral before, now shook his head as if disappointed in humanity. Zextra turned back to Jake one more time. I will give you a chance to defend yourself, human. Perhaps you will say something clever. Perhaps you will convince me that I am wrong about your species. Speak now. Tell us why Earth deserves to be treated as an equal. Jake took a slow breath. He could feel every eye in the chamber watching him. This was the moment that would define how the galaxy saw humanity. Every word he said would matter. Every emotion he showed would be analyzed and used against Earth. He opened his mouth and began to speak in a quiet but clear voice. I came here to negotiate in good faith. I came here to show the galaxy that humanity deserves respect. I came here to prove that we are worthy partners for trade and cooperation. I listened to what you have said, Ambassador Zextra. I understand your position. Jake paused. He looked directly into her eyes. But I will not argue with you. I will not defend my species against insults. I will not beg for recognition. If the Galactic Council needs proof of what humanity can do, then time will provide that proof. Words will not change your mind. So I see no value in continuing this conversation. The chamber went completely silent. No one had expected this response. Jake turned away from Zextra and began walking toward the chamber exit. His footsteps were loud on the polished floor. Every delegate watched him move. Some looked confused. Some looked angry. Some looked curious about what he would do next. Zextra called after him. Run away then, human. Prove that your species lacks the pride to defend its honor. Prove that you are as weak as I have said. But Jake did not run. He did not stop walking. He did not turn around to respond. He simply continued forward at the same steady pace, his hands still at his sides, his face still calm. He reached the great doors at the end of the chamber. The automated system read his identification, and the doors swung open. Jake walked through them and disappeared from sight. The assembly hall erupted in noise. Delegates stood and began arguing with each other. Some thought Jake was a coward. Others thought his silence showed true strength. Zextra returned to the council and declared that humanity was not worth further discussion. The negotiation session was ended. Earth's representatives were dismissed. Back at the human embassy on Meridian 7, Jake met with Captain Linda Myers, who led Earth's space defense fleet. Linda was younger than Jake, maybe 40 years old. She had served in Earth's military for 20 years. She was sharp and understood combat strategy better than anyone else in the human fleet. Jake told her exactly what had happened in the council chamber. He described Zexthra's insults. He told her about the laughter from the other delegates. He explained how he had walked away without responding. Linda listened carefully. When Jake finished, she did not look angry or disappointed. Instead, she nodded slowly. "They will report that you are weak," Linda said. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact. "Yes," Jake replied. "Zexthra will tell her government that humanity is not a threat. That will buy us time." Linda understood what he meant. A slow smile appeared on her face. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars beyond the station. "Then we should make sure they are wrong," she said quietly. "But we will do it slowly. We will do it in silence. We will do it in a way they never expect." Jake nodded. The real work was about to begin. The attack came 3 weeks after the council meeting. A human cargo transport was traveling through neutral space, carrying supplies and scientific equipment back to Earth. The ship was called the Horizon. It was not a military vessel. It carried only 40 crew members, most of them engineers and scientists. There was no reason for anyone to target it. It was just a simple cargo ship doing routine work. The Vorthan destroyer that had been waiting near Meridian 7 suddenly jumped to the location of the Horizon. The cargo ship's sensors detected the Vorthan vessel in their space. The captain of the Horizon tried to communicate, asking why a military ship was approaching them in a hostile manner. But the Vorthan did not respond. They simply fired their weapons. The first volley of weapons destroyed the cargo ship's communication systems. The second volley hit the engine compartment. The third volley broke through the hull itself. The Horizon started to lose pressure and power. The crew knew they were going to die. Many of them tried to seal off compartments to save the rest of the ship. Some of them worked to repair the damage, even as the walls cracked around them. But it was too late. The Horizon could not be saved. By the time the Vorthan weapons stopped firing, the cargo ship had broken apart. All 40 crew members were dead. The Vorthan destroyer moved away from the debris field and jumped back to normal space near Meridian 7. The attack was over in minutes, but someone had been monitoring the situation. A small Earth survey ship had been working in a nearby sector. Its sensors picked up the energy signature of the Vorthan weapons firing. The survey ship had no weapons, but it had powerful communication equipment. The captain of the survey ship immediately sent an emergency message back to Earth, describing what he had seen. The message reached Earth in 3 hours. Captain Linda Myers received the report in her command center. She read it carefully. 40 dead. A civilian cargo ship destroyed. An unprovoked attack in neutral space. It was exactly what she had been expecting. It was exactly what Zexthra had been planning. Linda activated the 3 battle groups immediately. Commander Sarah Cole, Captain Jack Morrison, and Captain Rachel Torres all received the same order at the same time. The message was simple. Go. Engage the Vorthan destroyer. All weapons free. Defend Earth's right to exist. The 3 human battle groups jumped into hyperspace simultaneously. They had been waiting and hiding near the edge of human-controlled space. Now they moved with purpose. Each group contained 4 destroyers and 6 fighter squadrons. Combined, they carried enough firepower to take on a much larger Vorthan force. If used correctly, the Vorthan destroyer was still near Meridian 7 when the human ships arrived. The Vorthan captain thought the incoming ships were civilian vessels or perhaps exploration teams. But when the human vessels activated their weapons and began attacking, the Vorthan captain understood the situation immediately. He called for support and began to fight back. But something was wrong with the Vorthan strategy. The human ships were not fighting the way the Vorthan expected. They were not trying to match the destroyer's firepower directly. Instead, the human fighters moved in patterns that confused the Vorthan weapon systems. The human destroyers attacked from multiple angles simultaneously, forcing the Vorthan vessel to spread its defensive fire thin. A Vorthan support cruiser arrived to assist the destroyer. But by then, the human ships had already adjusted their tactics. The human forces split into 3 different attack patterns. Some fighters attacked the support cruiser while the destroyers focused fire on the main destroyer. Another group of fighters began launching missiles that the Vorthan weapons could not track effectively because the missiles changed direction too quickly. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, the Vorthan destroyer was disabled and burning. The support cruiser had fled the area, damaged and limping back toward Vorthan space. 2 Vorthan escort ships had been destroyed completely. The Vorthan had lost over 500 soldiers in the battle. The human forces had lost 2 fighters and suffered some damage to 3 destroyers. But all the main human ships were still operational. The human casualty count was 37 soldiers. The difference was stark and clear to anyone watching. News of the battle reached the Galactic Council within hours. Emergency sessions were called. The Vorthan government demanded answers about what had happened. Zexthra was called to explain how human military ships had managed to defeat a Vorthan destroyer. 2 days after the battle, Jake walked into the council chamber once again. He wore his military uniform. His expression was not angry. It was not triumphant. It was simply steady and sure. The council chamber was already full. Every delegate was waiting to see what the human representative would say. The Vorthan ambassador, Zexthra, was sitting in her assigned seat, her forearms crossed against her body. Her gray skin looked pale. Her face showed visible stress. Jake stood in the center of the chamber and began to speak. A human ship was attacked in neutral space, he said, his voice calm and clear. 40 human crew members were killed. They were not soldiers. They were engineers and scientists. They were not in military space. They were following all rules of neutral territory travel. The attack was unprovoked and intentional. Jake presented evidence to the council. Sensor data from the survey ship. Communication records from before and after the attack. Technical analysis of the weapons used. Every piece of evidence proved that the Vorthan had fired first and that the cargo ship had made no hostile action. In response to this attack, Jake continued, Earth activated its military defense forces. 3 human battle groups engaged the Vorthan destroyer and the supporting military vessels. The Vorthan forces were destroyed or disabled. This action was taken in self-defense and in defense of Earth's right to travel safely through neutral space. Zexthra stood up from her seat. She looked like she wanted to speak, but no words came out. She had been certain that humanity was weak. She had reported to her government that humans posed no threat. She had publicly mocked human military capability. And now the evidence of human strength was displayed before every delegate in the chamber. Commander Krell, a high-ranking Vorthan military officer who had traveled to the council to represent the Vorthan government, stood up next. His voice was hard and controlled. This is an act of war, he said loudly. Humans have attacked a Vorthan military vessel. Humans have killed Vorthan soldiers. The Vorthan government demands explanation and compensation. Jake turned to face Krell directly. He did not raise his voice. He did not show anger or fear. The Vorthan government ordered an attack on an unarmed civilian vessel, Jake said. The humans defended themselves. This is not war. This is self-defense. If the Vorthan government wants actual war with Earth, then Earth is prepared to give it to them. But I do not think that is what you want. I think you want to pretend this did not happen and move forward with peace." The council chamber went completely silent. No one had expected the human representative to speak so directly, so firmly, and with such absolute confidence. Jake looked slowly at every delegate around the chamber, letting them see his eyes and understand that he was serious. Then he spoke again, his voice steady. "Earth comes before this council not as a weak species seeking protection. Earth comes as a people who refuse to be insulted, attacked, or dismissed. We have proven our strength. We have proven our courage. Now we ask only for the respect that we have earned." The negotiations began 10 days after the battle. The Vorthan government sent a high-ranking diplomat named Commander Krell to represent their interests. Krell was different from Zexthra. He was calm and professional. He did not mock humanity. He understood military strategy, and he recognized that the Vorthan had made a tactical error. The council chamber was set up for formal negotiations. Jake sat at a long table across from Commander Krell. Around them sat representatives from the other major galactic species. Each representative had the power to influence the council's final decision about what happened. Krell opened the negotiation by stating the Vorthan position. He said that the Vorthan destroyer had been conducting routine patrol operations near Meridian 7. He claimed that human ships had attacked without warning or justification. He demanded that Earth pay compensation for the loss of the Vorthan vessel and the deaths of Vorthan soldiers. He also demanded that human military operations be restricted to Earth's solar system. Jake listened carefully. When Krell finished speaking, Jake presented his evidence once more. But this time, it was more detailed. He showed sensor data that proved the Vorthan destroyer had jumped directly to the location of the human cargo ship. He showed weapon signatures that indicated the Vorthan had fired first. He showed the cargo ship's communications attempting to make peaceful contact before the weapon's fire started. "The evidence is clear," Jake said, speaking in the calm voice he had developed over months. The Vorthan attacked a civilian vessel. This was not routine patrol activity. This was a deliberate military action designed to intimidate Earth. A Kratchian delegate, an alien with blue skin and intelligent eyes, asked a question. Why would the Vorthan deliberately attack a human cargo ship? What would they gain from such an action? Jake turned to face the Kratchian representative directly. Because they believed humanity was weak. Because they believed we could be bullied into accepting a subordinate position in the galactic community. Because they wanted to make us afraid. He looked back at Krell. But they were wrong. We are not weak. We are not easily frightened. And we will not accept being treated with disrespect. Another delegate, the Telker ambassador, leaned forward in his seat. What do you propose as a solution, Commander Harrison? What does Earth want from these negotiations? Jake had prepared for this question carefully. He had discussed it with Captain Linda Myers and with other members of the human diplomatic team. He knew what Earth needed and what was achievable. Earth wants 3 things, Jake said. First, we want formal recognition as an equal member of the galactic community. We want fair access to trade agreements and resource markets. Second, we want the Vorthan government to officially acknowledge that they ordered the attack on the horizon and to apologize for this action. Third, we want a mutual defense agreement that protects both human and Vorthan interests in neutral space. Krell's expression hardened. The Vorthan government will not apologize. The attack was justified as a response to human hostility toward our species. Jake did not argue or become angry. He simply nodded. Then, we have nothing further to discuss, he said. Earth will take this matter to every member of the galactic community. We will make sure that every civilization knows exactly what happened. We will explain how the Vorthen attacked an unarmed civilian ship. We will show how human military forces were forced to defend themselves. And we will let each civilization decide for themselves whether they trust the Vorthen to follow the rules of neutral space. Jake started to stand up from his chair, preparing to leave the negotiation chamber. Something changed in Krull's expression. The commander understood the situation. If Earth made the full details public to the entire galactic community, the Vorthen would lose trust with other species. Other civilizations would become nervous about Vorthen military actions. The Vorthen government would lose trading partners and allies. The damage to Vorthen interests would be severe and long-lasting. "Wait," Krull said, raising one hand. "Sit down. Let us continue this discussion." Jake sat back down slowly. "The Vorthen government," Krull said carefully, "will acknowledge that there was a misunderstanding between our species. We will agree that the human cargo ship should not have been engaged. We will offer compensation for the loss of life. And we will agree to establish clear communication protocols to prevent future incidents." It was not a full apology, but it was close to one. It was Krull's way of finding middle ground that both sides could accept without losing too much honor. Jake considered the offer. It was not perfect, but it was better than he had expected from the Vorthen government. He looked at the other delegates around the chamber. They were watching carefully to see how he would respond. "Earth will accept this arrangement," Jake said. "We will also agree to the mutual defense agreement for neutral space. And we propose that human and Vorthen military officers meet regularly to share tactical knowledge and prevent misunderstandings in the future." The council chamber erupted in activity. Delegates were speaking to each other, taking notes, making calculations about what this meant for their own species. Several delegates were actually nodding in approval at Jake's proposal. The idea that different species could learn from each other about military strategy was revolutionary in galactic politics. Krull extended one of his hands across the negotiation table. In his species, this was a gesture of respect and agreement. Jake reached across and took his hand. The contact was firm and sure. No words passed between them, but both commanders understood what had happened. The negotiation was over. Humanity had won. After the formal signing of the agreements, Jake attended a reception where delegates from different species could speak informally. Many representatives came to talk with him. They asked questions about human military training. They expressed interest in human tactical philosophy. Several offered to begin direct trade negotiations with Earth, but the person Jake was most interested in finding was Zexthera. The Vorthen ambassador had been sitting in the corner of the reception hall, watching the proceedings. She looked smaller somehow. Her confidence was gone. She understood that her career in diplomacy was probably over. Jake approached her slowly. Zexthera seemed to tense up, expecting Jake to gloat or demand something from her. But Jake simply stood beside her and looked out at the other delegates. "I hope your government recognizes that all species deserve respect," Jake said quietly. "I hope the Vorthen will learn from this experience. I do not hold any grudge against your people. I would prefer that Earth and the Vorthen species become partners instead of enemies." Zexthera turned to look at him. Her eyes showed confusion. She had insulted him publicly. She had tried to destroy Earth's future in the galactic community. She had caused the deaths of human crew members. And instead of anger, she was seeing only calm acceptance and even kindness. "Why are you not angry?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. Jake turned to face her directly. "Because anger clouds judgment," he said. "Because I am secure enough in my own strength that I do not need to prove it through rage. Because your insults revealed something important about yourself, not about humanity. Your dismissal of us was based on your own assumptions, not on facts. We proved the facts. That is enough. He nodded respectfully to her and then walked away, leaving Zexthra standing alone in the reception hall, understanding finally what she had miscalculated about humanity and what true strength actually was. 6 months had passed since the negotiations ended. Earth's position in the galactic community had changed completely. Trade agreements were now in place with 17 different species. Human scientists were receiving access to advanced medical technology and energy systems that would change Earth forever. Human military officers were being invited to speak at military academies across multiple civilizations. Captain Linda Myers had received a promotion. That made her the head of the newly created Interstellar Defense Command. She reported directly to Earth's government and had authority over all human military operations across the solar system and beyond. She was stationed on a new space station that orbited Jupiter. From there, she coordinated with military leaders from other species and worked to maintain the security agreements that had been established. Military academies on 3 different civilizations had made the Earth-Vorthan conflict required study for all officer candidates. The lessons were not about glory or military superiority. They were about something more fundamental. They taught that strength combined with restraint was more powerful than strength combined with arrogance. They taught that speaking with truth and quiet confidence was more effective than speaking with insults and mockery. They taught that humanity had proven something important to the entire galactic community. A young species could emerge and earn respect not through conquest, but through refusing to back down when challenged. Jake had been offered a position as permanent representative to the Galactic Council. The Council wanted him to stay on Meridian 7 and continue to negotiate on behalf of Earth. They valued his perspective and his ability to understand different species. But Jake had declined the offer. He was tired of station life and political meetings. He wanted to return to Earth. A transport ship carried Jake back to his home planet 3 weeks after the trade agreements were finalized. He watched Earth grow larger in the viewport as the ship approached the atmosphere. The blue planet with its swirling white clouds was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. When the transport landed, Jake was greeted by representatives from Earth's government and military. They wanted to celebrate his success. They wanted to parade him through the cities as a hero. But Jake refused most of these events. He wanted to be alone with his thoughts and to see his home again in peace. Instead, he requested to visit the memorial site for the crew members of the Horizon. The site was built on the coast of California, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. A simple stone monument listed the names of all 40 crew members who had died. Flowers were placed at the base of the monument daily by people who wanted to remember the sacrifice. Jake arrived at the memorial on a clear morning. The ocean was calm. Seagulls flew overhead. He carried fresh flowers and placed them carefully in front of the monument. He read each name, saying them aloud so that they would be spoken and remembered. As he was finishing, a young woman approached him. She was in her late 20s, with dark hair and sad eyes. Jake recognized her immediately from photographs he had seen during the investigation into the Horizon's destruction. Her name was Claire Torres. She was the daughter of Captain Stephen Torres, who had been the commanding officer of the Horizon. "You are Jake Harrison," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," Jake replied. "I'm sorry for your loss. Your father was a good man. I read the records of his service. He was brave and honorable." Claire stepped closer to the monument. She looked at her father's name carved into the stone. "Thank you for what you did," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Thank you for making sure that my father's death was not meaningless. Thank you for making sure that the people who killed him were held responsible." Jake placed his hand on her shoulder. "I want to tell you about your father," he said. "I reviewed his military file after the attack. He had served on 3 different ships. Every commanding officer who worked with him said the same thing. He was the kind of person who would protect his crew, no matter what the cost. He was the kind of person who would never abandon his responsibilities. Claire's eyes filled with tears. She tried to speak but could not find the words. "Your father died because of the Vorthan aggression," Jake continued. "But he did not die in vain. Because of his death and the deaths of the other crew members, the Vorthan were forced to understand what happens when you underestimate humanity. Because of the Horizon, Earth is now treated as an equal in the galactic community. Your father helped make that possible." Jake and Claire spent the next 4 hours at the memorial. They talked about Captain Torres and his life. They talked about his family and his dreams. They talked about what he had accomplished and what he had meant to the people who knew him. By the time they finished, the sun was beginning to set over the ocean. Over the following weeks, Jake settled back into civilian life. He took a position as an advisor to Earth's government on galactic affairs, but the work was not demanding. He had time to spend with family and friends. He took long walks in the mountains. He read books that had nothing to do with military strategy or diplomacy, but sometimes he would stand in his home and look up at the stars. He would think about the Vorthan destroyer burning in space. He would think about Zexthera's shocked expression when she realized her assumptions were wrong. He would think about Claire Torsen, her father, and all the sacrifices that had been necessary. One night, Jake received a message through the Galactic Communications Network. It was from Commander Crow, the Vorthan representative. The message was brief and professional. Crow was being appointed as the Vorthan ambassador to Earth. He wanted to establish a strong relationship between the two species, based on mutual respect and military cooperation. He asked if Jake would be willing to meet with him when he arrived on Earth. Jake sent back a single-word reply: yes. He understood that the work was not truly finished, that the relationship between humanity and the Vorthan needed to be built carefully over time, that every interaction between the two species would help determine if they could move forward as partners, or if they would eventually become enemies again. But Jake was not worried. He had learned something important through this entire experience. Strength is most powerful when it is combined with restraint. Victory is most meaningful when it does not require the destruction of your enemy's dignity. The ability to walk away from an insult, to let your actions speak louder than your words, to respond to aggression with measured force and then offer the hand of friendship. These were the things that made a warrior truly powerful. Jake looked up at the stars and felt the weight of Earth beneath his feet. His species had taken its first steps into the larger galaxy. They had been tested, and they had not broken. They had been insulted, and they had not responded with blind rage. They had been challenged, and they had risen to meet the challenge with courage and intelligence. The future was uncertain. There would be other conflicts and other challenges. But humanity had proven something fundamental about itself. They were not just survivors. They were warriors who understood the true meaning of strength. And that understanding would carry them forward into whatever was waiting for them among the stars.